Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group, and with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
I am just grateful to be warm given what's going on around the country. We have deep freezes everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the football game in Kansas City the other night, the wind chill was minus 30. Just a few hundred miles to the west of us, Buffalo's game got snowed out for a day, and they're expecting, 1 to 3 feet of snow and so on and so forth. And so upper 20s today here is not that bad. And that snowstorm that we had a week ago that dumped a foot on us, it's
All
all
gone. Yeah,
so
and as we record this, Iowa is kicking off the Iowa caucuses in the 2024 political season, and they are going out to caucus in negative 20-degree weather. And bless them, I heard from a number of folks out there, and they're not letting that stop them. So, that's great. They know they're doing their civic duty, and negative 20 degrees isn't enough to keep them home.
nope. But I'm not moving to Iowa anytime soon.
Yeah, that's a little cold for my tastes.
A lot cold.
Yeah.
Wisconsin. So I don't remember quite that much from when I was 9 or 10 years old, but I do remember seeing a lot of snow. So
Yeah, I had a conversation with my son. This is going back many, many years. He was probably about six or seven. And he goes, I want to move to upstate New York. I said, why? Because they have a lot of mountains there. It looks cool. I said, they also have a lot of snow there. And he went, Texas it is.
there you go. Talk about so
So, yeah. So, talking about kicking off the political season, we've all heard every candidate has a platform. And we touched on this briefly last week, but today we are going to be talking about the kindness platform. And Chip, as we were discussing just before we started recording, there definitely seems to be a need for kindness in this day and age. We seem to be lacking that.
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, this is actually my new approach to really just teaching the same thing that I have always taught as the happiness and success GPS, and that's basically living life with the 4 P's: purpose, passion, positivity, and a plan is the formula for happiness and success and turning obstacles into opportunities. And most of our obstacles are the results of disagreeing with each other, and the opportunities are turning things around. And the key to doing that is guiding your response to life's events with positivity. And another word for positivity can be driven by love, or it can be kindness. So over the last couple months of last year, I was trying to think of a new approach for things moving ahead. And the first thing I came up with is we have been getting vaccinated against flus forever to prevent that. In the last 3 years, we've been getting vaccinated so that we don't get COVID anymore, and so on and so forth. And so I took that theme and I said, we need an infusion of positivity and kindness. And the thing about that is, all it is awareness that you can use that for every present moment event. Therefore, if you get that one infusion of positivity, which will project itself in kindness, you can auto renew that anytime you want. You don't need any boosters or anything else because that is all in your awareness. So taking a positive approach to that and looking at the fact that here we are in election year. So obviously we have Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives, and so on and so forth, going at each other tooth and nail and so on and so forth with the platforms that everybody made up. I mean, that's another preface. We were born from good, and therefore good is in all of us. And mankind, we created words, our platforms, the way we think about things, and so on and so forth. Therefore, we created all the conflict that is out there. And so, what I am talking about this year and moving ahead is the platform of kindness to guide all other platforms, because kindness, love and kindness was the original platform when we were created as human beings, before we started creating anything else. That was always there. And if we get back to the basics to guide ourselves when we are interacting with people with different platforms, and we look to understand each other and to collaborate to kind of come up with mutual solutions, because you look at these elections and so on and so forth, and maybe people going to vote on this and that, whatever, if they're disagreeing with each other, they're at each other. And if you can just understand, if you change the subject to something else as far as family and friends and so on and so forth, all of a sudden you're going to find commonalities. And what people think about politics or religion or anything else goes out the door. It's just that simple. If you can change things and govern things with kindness and just understand people for what they are, all coming from the same source, all, if you believe in God or whatever, we're unconditionally created with love, and we are unconditionally forgiven by our Creator. Our Creator did not create anything that was negative or bad. We did that ourselves. So the sooner we can understand that that person in the mirror, you, is worth a whole lot more than you think you are, and just go out and share yourself with other people. That's what this is all about. So that is my platform, really just awareness. The platform of kindness is just an awareness that every single present moment is an opportunity for you to guide your response with kindness. Plain and simple. That's what it is. And realizing that we are all going to mess up from time to time, if we can get that habit going for us so that it grows and grows and grows and it becomes more of a habit, that's what life is all about. And if you take a look in the mirror, it's the beginning of 2024, and you just make a pact with yourself. Just look in the mirror and say, I am going to practice a kindness platform, realizing you're going to have your down moments. If you do that and start practicing that, I love the Bro Ives. Here comes Santa Claus. Say hello to friends you know and everyone you meet. Basically, that's it. It's kindness is a very, very simple word. Practice it. Don't overcomplicate things. Watch the magic happen in your life and with the people that you interact with, because that's all you can do is interact one action at a time. You're not going to wave a wand and change the world. There is no automatic fix.
Yeah, kindness is a very simple word, but it is definitely capable of complex interactions. One of the things that you just said that I really like is about at the core of it, it's about understanding. Most people, when they're coming to an issue from different points of view, their focus is defending their point of view. And instead, if you try to understand where the other person is coming from and what it is that's guiding their decisions and their point of view, you'll many times find you're not nearly as far apart as it feels. And I've actually dealt with clients where I have seen them argue with each other without ever realizing they were agreeing, but they were saying things so differently and not understanding where the other was coming from that they just got entrenched in an argument and finally had to say, do you two realize you're saying the exact same thing? And that happens more often than you'd think. So if you come across it and you approach it with understanding and kindness rather than defensiveness, then it allows you to really have a feel for what the other person is saying. Now, they may not agree with you. You may not be able to change their mind. They may not be able to change your mind. But by understanding where they come from and having compassion for how they got to where they are, then you can understand better why they have that platform, why they believe what they believe, and find tolerance, which is something else that we seem to be sorely lacking in this world right now. And the other thing you had said that really caught my attention was the analogy to vaccinations. Because I have been doing a lot of reading on quantum physics and something called quantum health. And what quantum health is about the fact that our bodies can actually create most of the medications that we need to fix what's wrong with us if we learn how to do it and have the right nutrition and, put all the things in place. Well, kindness is something that we can vaccinate ourselves with, and we have the complete ability to generate that on demand whenever we need it. And sometimes, yes, you'll need to take a step back and take a deep breath and then focus on it. Sometimes it'll just come naturally. But this is something that we can guard against negativity anytime we want with this self vaccination.
Yep. The key word is awareness. And if it's awareness, that means you can go back to that anytime. You don't need a booster of that because it's already in your mind. So if you just think kindness as awareness that you can go back to at any point in time, that's what it's all about. As far as conflicts with each other and so on and so forth, seek first to understand, then to be understood. It's right out of the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I mean, this isn't anything that I've made up. This is just kind of like taking what I have learned and putting it in simple terms for people to understand. And that's what it's all about. And the bottom line is sometimes you're going to agree to disagree. But the most important thing is to live it instead of say it. Our tongues are a deadly weapon. And if we can filter what's in our brains and what comes out of our mouths with kindness, we are going to avoid a whole lot of problems and make the whole world a whole lot better place because of that. How many times have you bit your tongue after you said something saying, I wish I hadn't done that? Example is not the main thing in influencing people. It is the only thing. So live it, and people will ask you, how come you are what you are? I want a piece of what Chip's got. I want a piece of what Eric's got. What's your clue? And all you have to do is watch us, and you see what makes us work, what makes it tick. So
Yeah, I think a very simple rule for folks to follow is, the myth is it's from the Hippocratic Oath. It's actually not. There's nothing about this in the Hippocratic Oath that doctors take. But first, do no harm. That is, everyone thinks that's from the Hippocratic Oath. It isn't actually, but it's still a great rule to follow, and it is something that doctors are trained in. And for the rest of us, think about the harm your words are doing. Think about the harm your actions are doing. And if you start with that rule, first do no harm, how much more understanding will you accomplish when people know you're not trying to harm them? You're not there to cause trouble. It's about learning to communicate with people. And people have very different communication styles, which is why, as I said earlier, people can be saying the exact same thing in such radically different ways that they don't recognize it. So by using this platform of kindness, it gives people that commonality. If everybody starts from that point, then it is much less likely for misunderstandings to take place. If you're starting with do no harm, Google very famously said their first mission statement was don't be evil. And of course, unfortunately, they went back on that promise very quickly. But if the rest of us follow that and approach people with the assumption that, yes, you don't want to hurt them, you don't want to cause them trouble, you want to understand them, and even better, collaborate with them using this platform of kindness so that people can communicate better, they can understand better. And when you understand more, you can accomplish more. And you can see where different pieces can fit together to get to common goals and work together.
Yeah, the do no harm, same thing as the golden rule. Do unto
Yep.
others as you would have them do unto you. It's plain and simple. Uh, I always talk about the formula for the present moment. Basically, event plus response equals outcome. That is life. Plain and simple. A series of present moment events. Your response determines the outcome. However, there's another R in there, which I talk about often. Response is your action, it's what you do. However, your reaction is what you feel, what you think about. And that's what, if you could put that pregnant pause, put that mantra in there, do no harm, do no harm, do no harm, before you respond, which most of the time should just be silence or doing nothing at all. Think of what the ramifications of that are. And what does that do to you? First of all, it's going to make your life a whole lot better. What's that going to do to other people when they see you acting like that, even though they know you might not agree with them? You're going to be more approachable. If they do have a problem, if they wanted a little bit of advice or this or that or whatever, they're more likely to go to you because they know that you are approachable and you're in their corner. You're trying to help them out, and it's not about us. It's about them. And the bottom line is, making it about them makes it about us too. That's just the way that life works. But it's from your heart as opposed to from your mind and all these things, these platforms that we have in there that supposedly drive us. The one platform that should be over all of those to drive all the other platforms before you get into it is simply kindness.
Yes, and I think something that people really need to understand is that response and reaction are not the same thing. Reaction tends to be a knee-jerk reaction. There's really no thought involved. It's an emotional reaction, reaction immediately. And that's where most of us get into trouble. If we respond, then you're taking a moment. You're considering what was said, what was done, and you're figuring out what the appropriate response is. So that difference between reaction and response can literally be a split second, but it's the difference between reacting emotionally and responding intelligently. Yeah, a reaction is, it comes from what people call the primitive lizard brain. It's fight or flight. It's immediate. It's emotional. Response is more cerebral. Response is figuring out how to respond. Response is about taking what was said and done into consideration and looking at the motives and looking at the results and figuring out what the proper response is. So there is a big difference between those two things, even though it could just be a split second. But a reaction generally draws a counter reaction. And that's where the arguments start. That's where the disagreements start. When people have stepped away from responses and they're just reacting. And we really do need to avoid that in our day-to-day lives. One, to have everything run more smoothly, but two, to be able to collaborate with people, to be able to communicate, and to really understand people and what they're trying to accomplish and how that ties into what you want to accomplish. And again, reaction tends to, again, draw reaction. So what you're getting is two bulls charging at each other. Whereas with a response, you're building on what was said and done. And then they can build on what you've said and done, and you can come to an agreement. You can accomplish more. There's an old saying, you accomplish more standing on the shoulders of others. That's what response leads to rather than reaction. And it's important that people understand the difference.
Yeah, again, reaction is a feeling, and you are always going to have negative feelings. Think driving, you know, but your response is as simple as just a word. Response is an action. Just think of reaction, feelings, which are always subject to being positive and negative. Response, that's your choice. That is an action, and you can drive that with positivity. I know I've used this analogy before by Lao Tzu, who was around before Christ. And basically, he said, I have three things to teach you in life. Your three greatest treasures are simplicity, patience, compassion. So you look at an event. If you simplify that, and then patience means taking that pregnant pause before you respond to that. And if you look at that pause with compassion for the person that you're dealing with, for the situation, and so on and so forth, that drives everything. But again, a response is actually an action. This is the words, and this is what gets you in trouble. Reactions, we're human. They are always, always, always going to happen. If you can keep them to yourselves, and I know it's hard to do that, and it's impossible in many instances, but the more that you can train yourself to use kindness as your influence, it's so important. And speaking of the word influence, we are up against that big time all the time because of the internet and all the social media and so on and so forth, more so than we have ever been. I mean, we've always had negative influences out there, but back when you and I were growing up, we'd see the news once a day on the TV or read it in the newspaper. There was no online constant stuff. You answered the phone all the time. Now got it 24/7, and it's dominated, if you want it to be, by negative people, negative this and that. So one of the best things you can do to respond to all these different things as a response is to turn it off or just put it in its place for where it's at. That's where your patience is. So you take a look at all these instances, and yeah, I mean, I'm not waving a magic wand. All I'm saying is that every single present moment, if you inoculate yourself with the awareness of kindness, it's going to make a difference in you, and it's going to spread because positivity is contagious. Optimism is contagious, more so than any negativity out there, but you're not going to read about that in the newspapers or listen to it online or other media. It's just not covered.
Yeah, and something else that's important to note is that we're talking about all of this, and while the platform is simple, it's not necessarily easy, especially when we're bombarded with all of the negativity, all the bad news, everything on social media. And it does take an effort. You have to be willing to put that effort forward. You have to take a look, if you're on social media, you have to take everything with a grain of salt because the things that people are talking about to show how great their lives are generally just a small portion of their lives. You don't know what else they're going through. The negative things that are being posted aren't necessarily as negative as people are making them out to be, but they're just focusing on that one aspect of it. So you have to remember that when these things bombard you, you're not getting the full story. You're getting half a story at best. And folks are all going through their own things. They don't have the perfect lives that they're trying to portray on Facebook. Things are not as bad as being portrayed on social media. And something else is something we have seen come to light just over the last 100 days is that very often when people are shouting negativity, when they're acting out of violence, they're actually acting out of ignorance. They have no idea what's actually happening in the world, what's really going on. So if you take a moment and rather than reacting, go, wait a minute, is that real? And maybe take a few minutes to research it if you're really interested. And if it's not something that interests you, let it roll off your back. But the fact of the matter is, there is a lot of ignorance out there. And that ignorance leads to toxic negativity. So if you want to use this platform of kindness, you're going to have to make an effort. You're going to have to remind yourself again and again not to fall into the trap that, quite frankly, that negative people want to draw you into. They want you to be as negative as they are because that makes them feel better about themselves. Well, if you really want to make people feel better, don't fall for it. Be positive. Use kindness. Use understanding. Because that goes a lot further than negativity ever did.
Absolutely. And negativity, it just comes from your own insecurities. That's the bottom line. I mean, and you look at our supposed leaders out there who are the ones that are fighting back and forth with platforms for this and platforms for that and running this war and running that war and so on and so forth. You're looking at 1% or less of the population that are getting all the headlines and all the news and so on and so forth. They're there to serve the people who are in their countries, who are the ones that are the victims of the wars and everything else that is going on. And yet all they care about is their image and so on and so forth. And if they can, I hope some of them are listening out there, and I hope you folks who know leaders that are out there, ask people what they stand for as far as tolerance of other people and listening to other people and so on and so forth, instead of I'm right and you're wrong. Ask them that. Ask them how do they feel about a platform for kindness, or walk out there and say, look, my platform on who I'm voting for or who I'm going to follow is kindness. What do you have to say about that? Hit them with that. And you might see a lot of people going, duh. But that's what it's all about. And unfortunately, all we are hit with all the time is the negative things going on in the world. And there are a lot. And God bless all the people out there who are struggling from the wars and persecution and so on and so forth. And one person at a time, all we can do is help them out, and we can just pray for them, keep them in our thoughts and prayers. But the thing that we can do is just one person at a time, make sure that we're not a source of what's going on. Make sure that we're a source of making things better just by being positive and kind.
Well said. And we are just about at the end of our time. So why don't you sum up this platform really quickly for our listeners? And, what is the big takeaway that they need to have this week?
We all came from love, and the fruits of love is kindness. And if we use kindness to treat each other, who are our brothers and sisters, with kindness instead of confrontation, it's going to make a world of difference. So again, the kindness platform is just awareness that you can go to kindness to respond to every single event in your life. If you can put that into practice yourself, wonderful things are going to happen to the people you interact with you, and it will spread. So let's start that in 2024 and make that the platform forever.
Excellent. Yeah, I think for me, the big takeaway is that if you react rather than respond, you're never going to get anywhere. You need to understand where the person you're talking to is coming from. They may not be as diametrically opposed to your point of view as you think. But when you don't understand, when you're missing information, and when you are acting out of defensiveness instead of kindness, then it just perpetuates itself. And it becomes a spiral. And it just drags everybody down. So come from it from the platform of kindness. Come to conversations with the assumption that people are not out to destroy you, but they don't understand you, and that you might not understand them. And if you strive for that understanding, you can avoid that death spiral and improve situations. And that's what we all need to do, little by little, improve each situation just a bit. And the more you do that, and the more each of us does that, the better off we all are. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode of Success Showcase at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.